The morning sunlight streamed through the curtains, casting a soft glow over Maya's modest living room. At 8 months pregnant, her movements were slower, more deliberate, but her resolve hadn't wavered. She gently placed her hands on her round belly and smiled. "We're almost there, little one," she whispered. Maya's cousin, Sierra, had arrived in town the previous day, staying at the prestigious Alabaster Hotel downtown. Sierra had always been one for luxury, and this visit was no exception. Maya had promised to meet her for breakfast, a rare chance to catch up amidst the whirlwind of preparations for the baby. As she prepared to leave, Maya's husband, Daniel, entered the room, a tall, commanding presence with a kind smile. Daniel was everything Maya admired in a partner. He had just finished his morning briefing at the precinct, his uniform sharp and his badge gleaming. "Are you sure you don't want me to come with you?" he asked, concern flickering in his deep brown eyes. Maya shook her head. "I'll be fine. It's just a quick visit. Sierra wants to show me the hotel's view before heading out. I'll call if I need anything." Reluctantly, Daniel kissed her forehead. "Just take it easy, okay? Call me if anything feels off." The Alabaster Hotel loomed ahead, its pristine white facade glowing under the morning sun. The place exuded wealth and exclusivity, a world Maya rarely entered but wasn't intimidated by. As she stepped into the grand lobby, the opulence was overwhelming. Crystal chandeliers sparkled overhead, and marble floors reflected the elegant arches and polished furniture. Guests dressed in designer suits and flowing gowns moved about with an air of entitlement. Maya walked to the front desk, her hand instinctively resting on her belly. She offered the receptionist a polite smile and explained she was there to visit her cousin. Before the receptionist could respond, a man approached. A middle-aged white man with a slicked back hairstyle and a pinched expression. "Excuse me," he interrupted, his voice cold. "Can I help you?" Maya turned to him. "Yes, I'm here to visit my cousin. She's a guest here." The man looked her up and down, his lips curling into a sneer. "Do you have a reservation?" "No, I'm just visiting. My cousin is staying in room 1502. She's expecting me." He folded his arms, blocking her path. "I'm afraid we have strict policies about non-guests. We can't have disruptions." Maya frowned. "Disruptions? I'm just here for a visit. I won't be long." The man's gaze dropped pointedly to her belly, and his expression hardened. "Look, I don't think this is the right place for you. If something happens, if you go into labor or something else, you'll be liable for any damages." Maya's heart began to pound, a mix of confusion and anger swelling within her. "What are you saying? That I'm not allowed to see my cousin because I'm pregnant?" The man, whose name tag read, Gregory Stanton, manager, straightened his posture. "I'm saying this hotel has standards. I don't want any unnecessary complications." Several guests in the lobby turned to watch the exchange, their expressions ranging from curiosity to discomfort. Maya felt the weight of their stares but refused to back down. "I am not a complication," Maya said firmly. "I have every right to be here." Gregory's face darkened. "I don't think you understand. Leave now, or I'll call security." Maya, now visibly upset, refused to budge. "Call them if you want. I'm not leaving until I see my cousin." Her defiance seemed to push Gregory over the edge. He stepped closer, his voice a low hiss. "Don't make a scene here. Lady, this isn't the kind of place for people like you." The words struck Maya like a slap. She stared at him, stunned. "People like me?" she whispered, her voice trembling. Before she could react further, Gregory grabbed her arm roughly, shoving her back toward the entrance. The movement caused her to stumble, nearly losing her balance. A gasp erupted from the onlookers, and someone pulled out their phone to record. Maya winced, clutching her belly. Pain shot through her side as she struggled to steady herself. "What are you doing?" she cried. "Let me go." Gregory's grip tightened. "Get out. You're trespassing." "Enough," a voice shouted from the crowd. A woman in a business suit stepped forward, her phone recording. "I'm calling the police." The commotion grew louder. Guests murmured in shock, and a few demanded that Gregory stop. But he ignored them, his face twisted with rage. Maya, struggling to keep her composure, managed to pull out her phone. Her hands trembled as she dialed Daniel's number. When he answered, she could barely speak through her tears. "Daniel, I need you," within minutes. Daniel arrived, his police cruiser screeching to a halt in front of the hotel. The sight of his pregnant wife, shaken and clutching her belly, sent a surge of fury through him. He stormed into the lobby, his badge gleaming and his presence commanding. Who did this to her? His voice boomed, silencing the room. Gregory, now pale, took a step back. Officer, this isn't what it looks like. It looks like you assaulted my wife. Daniel growled, his fists clenched. And you will answer for it. Daniel's colleagues, who had followed him, began questioning witnesses and reviewing the footage captured by bystanders. Gregory's excuses crumbled under the weight of the evidence. Maya, still shaken, was escorted to an ambulance to ensure her and the baby's safety. As Daniel held her hand, his jaw tightened. No one hurts my family and gets away with it, he vowed as Gregory was handcuffed and led away. The once grand lobby was silent. Maya's courage had exposed the manager's prejudice for all to see. But the fight was far from over. Daniel knew this was only the beginning of a much larger battle, a battle for justice. Not just for Maya, but for everyone who had been silenced by people like Gregory. The seeds of change had been planted, and their story was about to unfold in ways no one could predict. Maya sat by the window, sipping a warm cup of chamomile tea. The morning light danced across her glowing skin, and the faint sounds of the city filtered through the open window. She had been counting down the days to her due date, eager yet nervous. Each movement of the baby inside her brought a mix of joy and anticipation. The sound of her phone buzzing broke her reverie. It was Sierra. Maya, you've got to come see this view. The Alabaster is everything they say it is and more. You'll love it. Sierra's voice was full of excitement. Maya hesitated. The Alabaster Hotel was known for catering to the wealthy elite, and she'd never set foot inside such a place. But Sierra was family, and it had been months since they last saw each other. This breakfast invitation wasn't just a meal, it was a chance to reconnect. I'll be there, Maya replied, her voice resolute. The Alabaster Hotel was every bit as grand as Maya had imagined. Its towering entrance gleamed with polished brass fixtures, and valets in crisp uniforms attended to luxury cars as though orchestrating a symphony. Maya, wearing a comfortable dress that hugged her swollen belly, stepped out of the cab and adjusted her purse. As she walked through the revolving doors, a wave of cool air swept over her, carrying the faint scent of lavender. The lobby was a world unto itself, a sea of marble and gold. Guests lounged in plush chairs, their conversations a low hum beneath the faint melody of a grand piano playing somewhere unseen. Maya took a deep breath. She wasn't intimidated, but the space felt different, exclusive. She approached the front desk, her shoes clicking softly against the polished floor. The receptionist greeted her with a rehearsed smile. But before Maya could explain her visit, another figure emerged. Gregory Stanton moved like he owned the place, his tailored suit impeccable and his expression sharp. His presence immediately shifted the atmosphere. He scanned Maya, his gaze lingering on her pregnant belly, and his lips thinned. "Excuse me," he interrupted, brushing past the receptionist. "Can I help you?" Maya smiled politely. "Yes, I'm here to visit my cousin, Sierra Johnson. She's staying in room 1502. Gregory's brows furrowed. "Are you a guest here?" "No," Maya replied evenly, "but my cousin invited me. I won't be staying long." Gregory folded his arms, his posture stiffening. "I'm afraid we have a strict policy regarding non-guests. It's for the safety and comfort of our patrons." Maya blinked. "I'm not here to cause trouble. I just want to see my cousin for breakfast." His eyes narrowed. "Look, ma'am, we can't have disruptions in the lobby. You'll have to leave." The word disruption hung in the air like a slap. Maya's heart raced as she tried to process his tone, his thinly veiled hostility. "Disruption?" she repeated, her voice rising slightly. "I'm standing here, calmly asking to see my cousin. What exactly do you mean by disruption?" Gregory's gaze dropped to her belly again, and the contempt in his eyes was unmistakable. "Let's not make this difficult. You're heavily pregnant, and frankly, we can't afford to deal with a mess if you know, go into labor or something. This isn't a hospital." Maya felt the blood drain from her face. Around her, a few guests had stopped to watch, their whispers barely audible over the pounding in her ears. "Excuse me?" Her voice trembled, a mix of disbelief and anger. "Are you saying I'm not welcome here because I'm pregnant?" Gregory raised a hand dismissively. "I'm saying this hotel isn't equipped for situations like yours. Now, please leave." The words cut deep, not just for their meaning but for the casual way he delivered them. As though it was perfectly reasonable to bar her from the hotel, Maya's hands clenched into fists at her sides. She had faced microaggressions before. But this was different. This was blatant, humiliating discrimination. And it was happening in front of an audience. "I'm not leaving," she said, her voice steady despite the storm brewing inside her. "I have every right to be here." Gregory's jaw tightened. "Listen, I don't have time for this. If you won't leave on your own, I'll have security escort you out." The murmurs among the onlookers grew louder. A few people pulled out their phones, recording the confrontation. Maya caught snippets of their whispers. "Is this really happening? She's just visiting. What's the big deal?" But Gregory wasn't paying attention to the crowd. His focus remained on Maya, and his patience was wearing thin. Before she could react, he reached out and grabbed her arm, his grip firm and unyielding. "Let me help you to the door," he said, his voice low and menacing. Maya gasped, stumbling as he pushed her toward the exit. Pain shot through her side, and she clutched her belly instinctively. A collective gasp rippled through the lobby as bystanders stepped forward, some shouting for Gregory to stop. "Let go of me," Maya cried, her voice breaking. "Hey!" a young woman with a phone yelled. "You can't do that. I'm recording this." But Gregory didn't stop. His face was a mask of cold authority, his grip tightening as he forced Maya toward the door. Tears streamed down Maya's face as she struggled against Gregory's hold. Desperation took over, and she fumbled for her phone, dialing the only number she could think of. "Daniel," she sobbed when her husband answered. "Please, come. He's hurting me." Daniel's voice sharpened immediately. "Where are you? What's happening?" "The Alabaster," she managed between gasps. "The manager, he won't let me in. Stay there." Daniel interrupted, his tone steely. "I'm coming." As the call ended, Maya felt a surge of relief. But the pain in her side was growing, and the humiliation of being manhandled in front of strangers made her want to disappear. The sound of sirens pierced the air as a police cruiser pulled up in front of the hotel. Daniel stepped out, his expression a mix of fury and determination. Dressed in full uniform, he was a commanding presence, and the crowd parted as he entered the lobby. "Maya," he called, his voice echoing through the grand space. When he saw her, tears streaking her face and her hand protectively over her belly, something inside him snapped. His gaze shifted to Gregory, who had stepped back but still looked defiant. "Who put their hands on my wife?" Daniel demanded, his voice like thunder. Gregory's confidence wavered, but he quickly masked it. "Officer, I can explain. She was." "Save it," Daniel interrupted, his tone deadly. "You assaulted a pregnant woman. My wife. In front of witnesses and cameras. You're coming with me." Daniel's fellow officers moved in, taking Gregory into custody. The crowd erupted into cheers and applause, their collective relief palpable. As Daniel wrapped his arms around Maya, she finally allowed herself to collapse into his embrace. "You're safe now," he whispered. "I've got you." But in his mind, Daniel was already planning the next steps. This wasn't just about Maya. It was about making sure no one else would ever have to endure what she had faced as the police car carrying Gregory disappeared into the distance. The lobby fell silent. Maya, her hands still resting on her belly, looked around at the faces of the onlookers. Some were sympathetic, others guilty for their silence. This wasn't over. It was just the beginning. And Maya, with Daniel by her side, was ready to fight, not just for herself, but for everyone who had been silenced by prejudice and fear. The stage was set for a battle that would change everything. Maya rose early that morning, her body feeling the weight of the third trimester but her spirit undeterred. Today was a rare chance to connect with Sierra, her cousin and confidant. Sierra's effusive personality and sharp wit had always been a source of joy for Maya. They hadn't seen each other in months, and the excitement of their reunion outweighed Maya's exhaustion. She glanced at her reflection in the mirror. Her glowing skin and the curve of her belly made her feel beautiful. Powerful even. She chose a flowing emerald green dress, one that complemented her dark skin and accentuated her maternal radiance. Before leaving, she rubbed her belly, speaking softly to the life inside her. "Let's go see Auntie Sierra. Okay? She's going to be so happy to see us." Daniel, already dressed for work, entered the room. His badge glinted under the sunlight filtering through the curtains. He leaned in, kissing her forehead. "You sure you don't want me to drive you?" he asked, his voice tinged with concern. "You've been on your feet a lot lately." Maya smiled. I'll be fine. It's just a quick visit. Sierra is staying at that fancy Alabaster hotel. I'll call if I need anything. Daniel nodded but couldn't shake the unease in his chest. Promise me you'll be careful. The Alabaster Hotel was a towering symbol of wealth and exclusivity. As Maya approached, she marveled at its grandeur, the shimmering glass facade, the meticulously manicured gardens, the valet attendants who moved with synchronized precision. Stepping into the lobby, she was greeted by the faint aroma of jasmine and the soft chords of a pianist playing near the bar. Maya straightened her shoulders, unwilling to let the luxury intimidate her. She had every right to be here. Sierra had invited her. After all, she walked toward the marble reception desk, her heels clicking softly against the polished floor. The receptionist offered a polite smile. Before Maya could speak, a man's sharp voice interrupted. Can I help you? Maya turned to see a middle-aged white man approaching. His sharp suit and stern demeanor radiated authority, but his narrowed eyes carried an air of suspicion. The name tag pinned to his lapel read Gregory Stanton, manager. Yes, Maya began, keeping her tone friendly. I'm here to visit my cousin, Sierra Johnson. She's staying in room 1502. Gregory's eyes flicked to her belly. His lip curled slightly. Are you a registered guest? Maya shook her head. No, but my cousin invited me for breakfast. I'll only be here for a short while. His demeanor shifted, his posture stiffening. I'm afraid we have policies regarding non-guests. This is a high-end establishment, and we can't have unregistered visitors wandering around. Maya frowned. I'm not wandering. I'm here to see my family. Gregory's smile was thin and condescending. I'm sure you understand. This isn't the place for unexpected situations. Maya's eyes narrowed. She knew exactly what he meant. She placed a protective hand over her belly, standing her ground. What kind of unexpected situations? She asked, her voice steady but tinged with steel. Gregory hesitated, his gaze flitting around the lobby as though seeking backup. Look, ma'am, you're clearly very close to your due date. We can't risk any incidents here. This is a luxury hotel, not a medical facility. Maya's stomach churned. The implication was clear. Her pregnancy was a liability, her presence an inconvenience. Anger simmered beneath her calm exterior. Are you saying I can't visit my cousin because I'm pregnant? She demanded. Gregory's expression hardened. I'm saying you need to leave. Now. Around them, the air grew charged. Guests lounging in the plush chairs nearby stopped their conversations, their attention drawn to the confrontation. A few began whispering, and the faint glow of phone screens indicated that someone was recording. I'm not leaving, Maya said firmly. You have no right to treat me like this. I'm here to see my family, and I'm not doing anything wrong. Gregory stepped closer, his tone lowering into a dangerous growl. Don't make a scene. Lady, I don't care who you're here to see. You don't belong here. The words hit Maya like a blow. She stood frozen, her mind racing, but she didn't back down. I have every right to be here, she said, her voice rising, and I'm not going anywhere. Gregory's patience snapped. He reached out, gripping her arm with more force than necessary. Let me escort you out. Let go of me, Maya cried, trying to pull free. The movement caused her to stumble, pain flaring in her side. A gasp rippled through the lobby. Stop, a woman shouted, stepping forward with her phone raised. You can't treat her like this. Call the police, someone else yelled. Gregory ignored the protests, his grip unrelenting. You're trespassing, he hissed, and I won't let you disrupt this establishment. Maya struggled, her breath hitching as tears filled her eyes. She managed to pull her phone from her pocket, her trembling fingers dialing Daniel's number. Daniel, she choked out when he answered. Please, come, the Alabaster. He's hurting me. Minutes later, the piercing sound of sirens cut through the tense air. A police cruiser screeched to a halt in front of the hotel, and Daniel emerged like a storm, his uniform crisp and his expression deadly. Inside, the crowd parted as he entered, his eyes immediately finding Maya. She stood near the entrance, clutching her belly, tears streaming down her face. Gregory was still holding her arm, his face pale with shock as he saw Daniel approach. Maya, Daniel called, his voice trembling with both anger and concern. As he reached her, he gently pulled her into his arms, his hand brushing over her belly. Are you okay? He asked, his voice soft but urgent. Before she could answer, he turned to Gregory, his expression hardening. Who put their hands on my wife? Gregory stammered, stepping back. Officer, she was trespassing. You were just assaulting a pregnant woman. Daniel snapped, in front of witnesses and cameras. The officers who had followed Daniel quickly moved in, taking Gregory into custody. As they read him his rights, the tension in the room dissolved into murmurs of relief and outrage. Some guests clapped, while others voiced their disbelief at what they had witnessed. Daniel turned back to Maya, his eyes softening. Let's get you checked out, he said, guiding her toward the waiting ambulance as Maya sat in the ambulance, her hand resting protectively over her belly. She watched through the window as Gregory was led away in handcuffs. The humiliation and pain she had endured burned in her memory. But Daniel's presence beside her was a balm. This isn't over, Daniel said, his voice low but resolute. He's going to pay for this. Maya nodded, her tears drying as a sense of determination replaced her fear. She wasn't just a victim, she was a fighter. And with Daniel by her side, she knew justice would prevail, not just for her, but for everyone who had ever been made to feel small in the face of prejudice. The stage was set for a battle that would shake the foundations of the Alabaster Hotel, and beyond. The news broke within hours. Videos of the incident at the Alabaster Hotel spread like wildfire across social media. Clips of Maya, her trembling voice demanding respect, juxtaposed against Gregory Stanton's aggressive behavior, sparked outrage. The hashtags #JusticeForMaya and #AlabasterIncident began trending by midday. Maya lay in the hospital bed, her hand resting on her belly while Daniel paced the room. The doctor had assured them that the baby was unharmed, but the emotional toll on Maya was evident. She stared at the ceiling, her mind replaying the scene in the hotel lobby. How could someone hate so easily? She whispered, her voice breaking. Daniel stopped pacing and sat beside her. He took her hand, his jaw tight with controlled anger. It's not hate, he said softly. It's fear. Fear of losing their power, their control. And people like that will do anything to keep it. But what if I hadn't called you? Maya asked, her voice shaking. What if no one had stepped in? Daniel's grip on her hand tightened. Then we make sure no one else ever has to ask that question. We're not letting this slide. Maya, I promise you. The footage of Gregory Stanton shoving a pregnant woman became the lead story on every major news network. Reporters camped outside the Alabaster Hotel, eager for statements from management. The hotel's initial response, a carefully worded statement apologizing for the unfortunate misunderstanding, only fanned the flames. Maya's cousin Sierra, furious and protective, gave an impassioned interview, describing what had happened in vivid detail. Maya was there to see me. She wasn't trespassing. She wasn't causing a disturbance. She was treated like she didn't belong simply because of the color of her skin, and because she's a pregnant black woman. That's not a misunderstanding. That's discrimination. Community leaders rallied behind Maya. Protests formed outside the hotel, with activists demanding accountability. Placards reading, "Justice for Maya," and "Racism has no place here," filled the sidewalks. Gregory Stanton, now facing charges of assault and civil rights violations, hired a high-profile attorney. The defense team's strategy was clear: shift the narrative. They claimed Gregory was acting within the hotel's policies and that the incident was being misconstrued by the media. A press conference was held, where Gregory, flanked by his lawyers, attempted to appear remorseful. "I deeply regret how the situation unfolded," he said, his voice carefully measured. "I acted in the hotel's best interests, but I understand how my actions may have been misinterpreted." Maya watched the conference from home, her blood boiling. "Misinterpreted?" she said aloud. "He grabbed me. He shoved me." Daniel, sitting beside her, shook his head. "Let him dig his own hole. The truth is on our side." As the legal process began, Daniel and his team dug deeper into Gregory's history. What they found was damning. Former employees came forward, sharing stories of Gregory's discriminatory practices. One woman, a former receptionist, recounted how Gregory routinely denied service to guests he deemed undesirable. Another staff member revealed that Gregory had implemented unwritten rules to exclude people of certain races from certain areas of the hotel. These revelations hit the headlines, further damaging Gregory's credibility. The Alabaster Hotel's corporate office, eager to distance itself from the controversy, suspended Gregory and released a second statement condemning his actions. But for Maya, it wasn't enough. Suspension isn't justice. She told Daniel, he needs to face consequences, not just for me, but for everyone he's hurt. The courtroom was packed on the first day of the trial. Maya sat with Daniel on one side, Gregory flanked by his legal team on the other. The air was heavy with anticipation. The prosecution wasted no time laying out the case. They presented the video evidence, witness testimonies, and Gregory's troubling history. Maya's testimony was the emotional centerpiece. As she recounted the pain, fear, and humiliation she felt that day, the room was silent. I wasn't just fighting for myself, Maya said, her voice steady despite the tears streaming down her face. I was fighting for my child, for the world I want them to grow up in. The defense, however, was ruthless. They attempted to paint Maya as overreacting and suggested that Gregory was merely enforcing hotel policies. Policies don't include assault, Daniel muttered under his breath during one of the defense's arguments outside the courthouse. The community rallied around Maya. Activists held vigils, and local leaders organized forums to discuss systemic racism and its impact on society. Maya, initially hesitant, began to speak at these events, sharing her story and encouraging others to stand up for justice. It's not just about me, she told a crowd one evening. It's about everyone who's been told they don't belong. It's about changing the narrative. Daniel stood in the crowd, watching his wife with pride. She was turning her pain into power. And he knew this was only the beginning of her impact after weeks of testimony. The jury reached a verdict. The courtroom was silent as the judge read the decision, guilty on all counts. Gregory Stanton was sentenced to significant jail time and hefty fines. The courtroom erupted into a mixture of applause and tears. Maya felt a wave of relief wash over her. Justice had been served, not just for her, but for every person who had been silenced or dismissed. Outside the courthouse, reporters clamored for a statement. Maya, standing beside Daniel, spoke directly into the cameras. This isn't just my victory. It's ours. It's proof that when we stand together, we can create change. With Gregory behind bars, the focus shifted to the broader implications of the case. The Alabaster Hotel underwent significant restructuring, implementing diversity training and pledging to hire more inclusive leadership. Maya's story inspired legislative discussions about discrimination and accountability in the hospitality industry. Maya and Daniel, though relieved, knew the fight wasn't over. This is just one battle, Maya said. There's still so much work to do. That evening, Maya and Daniel sat on their porch, watching the sunset. The world felt a little brighter, a little more just. As Maya placed her hand over her belly, she felt the baby kick, a reminder of the future they were building. We did it, Daniel said softly. Maya smiled, her eyes glistening with tears. No, she replied. We started it, the morning after the incident. Maya sat at the kitchen table, staring at the cup of tea Daniel had placed in front of her. She hadn't touched it. Her hands rested on her belly, her mind replaying the events at the Alabaster Hotel in vivid detail. Every shove, every dismissive word echoed in her memory. Daniel's phone buzzed incessantly, vibrating across the counter as calls from reporters, activists, and colleagues poured in. He ignored them all, his attention fixed on Maya. We're taking this to court, he said, breaking the silence. Maya's eyes lifted to meet his. What if they don't believe me? What if they twist the story? They won't, Daniel said firmly. Not this time. The world saw what happened. They saw you, Maya, and they saw him. News of the incident spread like wildfire, dominating headlines and social media feeds. The videos were shared millions of times, and the public reaction was swift. Activists organized protests outside the Alabaster Hotel, holding signs that read, "Justice for Maya," and "Pregnancy is not a crime." Local news stations aired panel discussions, with commentators dissecting every aspect of the event. Some focused on Gregory Stanton's blatant racism, while others debated the systemic issues that allowed such behavior to go unchecked. Inside their home, Maya and Daniel watched the coverage. It was surreal, seeing her own face on the screen, her trembling voice demanding to be treated with respect. This isn't just about us anymore, Maya said quietly. This is bigger than me. Daniel nodded. And that's why we can't stop now. Meanwhile, Gregory Stanton's legal team worked tirelessly to shift the narrative. His attorney, a polished man with a history of defending corporate elites, held a press conference. Mr. Stanton deeply regrets the events that transpired, the attorney said, his voice smooth and practiced. He was simply enforcing hotel policies designed to ensure the safety and comfort of all guests. Any interpretation beyond that is unfortunate and misleading. Gregory stood beside him, his face carefully blank, but Maya recognized the same cold arrogance she had seen in the hotel lobby. Maya clenched her fists as she watched the broadcast. He's acting like this was just a misunderstanding, she said, her voice shaking, like I'm the one who did something wrong. They're trying to control the narrative, Daniel said, but they can't hide from the truth. Daniel, determined to ensure Gregory faced justice, began investigating his past, using his connections in law enforcement. He dug into employee records, incident reports, and even anonymous complaints filed against the Alabaster Hotel. What he found painted a damning picture. Former employees came forward, recounting stories of Gregory's discriminatory practices. A Latina housekeeper described how Gregory had docked her pay for speaking Spanish during her break. A black concierge revealed that Gregory often reassigned guests of color to less desirable rooms, regardless of their reservation status. Daniel compiled the evidence, sharing it with the prosecutor's office. This isn't an isolated incident, he told the lead prosecutor. This is a pattern of behavior. The prosecutor, a sharp and empathetic woman named Olivia Marks, nodded. We'll use this to show the jury who Gregory Stanton really is. As the trial date approached, Maya struggled with the emotional toll. Her every move was scrutinized by the media. Reporters camped outside their home, and online trolls sent hateful messages questioning her character. One night, unable to sleep, Maya sat in the nursery, the room softly lit by a nightlight shaped like a moon. She ran her fingers over the crib Daniel had assembled, her heart heavy. I don't know if I'm strong enough for this, she whispered. Daniel appeared in the doorway, his expression tender. He knelt beside her, placing his hands over hers. You are, he said, you're stronger than anyone I know. And you're not doing this alone. Maya nodded, tears streaming down her face. I just want our baby to grow up in a better world. The courthouse was a circus on the first day of the trial. Protesters and supporters gathered outside, their chants filling the air. Inside, the courtroom buzzed with tension as Maya and Daniel took their seats. The prosecution opened with a powerful statement, highlighting the video evidence and Gregory's history of discriminatory behavior. They framed the case as not just about Maya but about systemic racism in places of privilege and power. Maya took the stand on the second day. The courtroom fell silent as she recounted her experience, her voice steady but emotional. When he looked at me, he didn't see a person, she said. He saw someone he thought didn't belong. And when I stood up for myself, he hurt me, for no other reason than he thought he could. The defense attempted to discredit her, suggesting she had exaggerated the encounter for attention. But Maya held her ground, her composure unwavering. I didn't ask for this, she said. I didn't want this, but I won't be silent about what happened. Outside the courtroom, the community rallied around Maya. Local leaders organized forums to discuss the broader implications of her case, using it as a springboard to address systemic discrimination in the city. Maya began attending these events, sharing her story and listening to others who had faced similar injustices. She became a symbol of resilience, her voice inspiring others to stand up for their rights. I'm not just fighting for myself, she told a packed auditorium one evening. I'm fighting for all of us. After weeks of testimony and deliberation, the jury returned with a verdict, guilty on all counts. Gregory Stanton was sentenced to substantial jail time and ordered to pay damages to Maya. The courtroom erupted into cheers as the verdict was read. Maya felt an overwhelming sense of relief, tears streaming down her face as Daniel hugged her tightly. It's over, he whispered. Maya shook her head. No, it's just beginning. The trial's outcome sparked a wave of change. The Alabaster Hotel announced sweeping reforms, including mandatory diversity training and the establishment of an oversight committee to address discrimination complaints. Other businesses in the city followed suit, recognizing the need for accountability. Maya and Daniel, though exhausted, felt a renewed sense of purpose. They started a nonprofit organization dedicated to combating discrimination and supporting victims of injustice one evening. Maya and Daniel sat on their porch, the weight of the past months slowly lifting. Maya placed her hand on her belly, feeling the baby's gentle movements. "You're going to grow up in a better world," she whispered. "We'll make sure of it." Daniel wrapped his arm around her shoulders, his gaze fixed on the horizon. "We already are," he said, "one step at a time." The day after the incident, Maya woke to a storm of notifications. Messages from friends, concerned calls from family, and endless links to news articles overwhelmed her phone. Videos of Gregory Stanton shoving her had gone viral, accompanied by a torrent of outrage and debates. Maya's face was plastered across headlines. "Pregnant woman assaulted in luxury hotel," and "Alabaster manager faces backlash over racism allegations." Daniel scrolled through the comments on one article, his jaw tightening as he read the vitriol. Some people expressed outrage, calling for Gregory's immediate arrest. Others, cloaked in anonymity, dismissed Maya's experience, accusing her of seeking attention. "She's just making it racial to get a payout." One comment read. Daniel slammed his phone on the table. "Unbelievable. They watched the video. What more proof do they need?" Maya, sitting across from him, sighed. "Some people don't want to see the truth, Daniel, but this isn't just about them. It's about making sure no one else has to go through this." Her calm, resolute words only fueled Daniel's determination. "Then let's make sure they pay attention." By the end of the week, Gregory Stanton was formally charged with assault and violating civil rights. The announcement was met with cheers from protesters gathered outside the courthouse. Maya's attorney, Olivia Marks, a fierce advocate for civil rights, assured her they had a strong case. Olivia laid out their strategy during a meeting at her office. "We'll focus on the video evidence, eyewitness testimonies, and Gregory's history. The defense will try to paint this as a misunderstanding or claim he was following hotel policy. But we have the truth on our side." Maya nodded, though her anxiety was evident. "And if they bring up my character? Or twist my words?" Olivia leaned forward, her voice firm. "We're not going to let that happen. They'll try, but we'll be ready. You have more strength than you realize, Maya, and the world is watching." As public pressure mounted, the Alabaster Hotel released a second statement. Unlike the initial tepid apology, this one condemned Gregory's actions and announced his suspension. They pledged to cooperate fully with the investigation and promised an internal review of their policies. But the damage had been done. Bookings plummeted, and corporate sponsors began distancing themselves from the brand. Former employees started coming forward, sharing stories of Gregory's misconduct. "He used to tell us to keep certain people out of sight," said one former concierge during an interview. "He never said it outright, but we knew exactly what he meant." These revelations became another wave of headlines, further tarnishing the hotel's reputation. Gregory's legal team wasted no time launching their counterattack. At a press conference, his lawyer, Richard Crow, claimed Gregory had acted in good faith. "My client was simply enforcing the hotel's strict policies regarding guest safety," Crow said. "This incident has been blown out of proportion by social media and the press." To Maya's disgust, Crow went further, suggesting that Maya had provoked the situation by refusing to comply. Watching the press conference from her living room, Maya's stomach churned. "Provoked?" she said, her voice trembling with anger. "I stood there and explained why I was there. I wasn't doing anything wrong." Daniel sat beside her, his hand on her shoulder. "They're grasping at straws. They know they can't win on the truth." As the trial date loomed, Daniel and Olivia uncovered damning details about Gregory's history. Former employees shared stories of racism, intimidation, and abuse of power. One whistleblower, a young black woman who had worked as a receptionist, revealed that Gregory had once refused to let a couple check in because their attire didn't meet the hotel's standards. The couple had later filed a complaint, but it was quietly dismissed. Another employee provided a copy of an internal memo Gregory had circulated, instructing staff to maintain the hotel's image by discouraging certain demographics from using public areas like the pool or lounge. This evidence, combined with Gregory's behavior in the video, painted a clear picture. This wasn't a one-time incident. It was part of a pattern. The trial began with a packed courtroom. Reporters lined the hallways, their cameras capturing every arrival. Maya, dressed in a simple but elegant dress, walked in beside Daniel, her head held high. The prosecution started strong, playing the video for the jury. The footage showed Gregory grabbing Maya's arm and shoving her, her cries of pain echoing in the background. Gasps rippled through the courtroom. Olivia called several witnesses, including the woman who had filmed the incident and the whistleblowers who had come forward. Each testimony built the case against Gregory, revealing his long-standing prejudice and abuse of authority. When Maya took the stand, the courtroom fell silent. She spoke calmly but passionately, describing the fear and humiliation she felt that day. "I wasn't just fighting for myself," she said, her voice steady despite the tears in her eyes. "I was fighting for my child, to show them that we don't back down in the face of injustice." The defense, however, was ruthless. Crow questioned her motives, suggesting she was exaggerating for financial gain. But Maya refused to be rattled. "I don't need money," she said firmly. "What I need is for people like Gregory Stanton to be held accountable, outside the courthouse." The community rallied. Activists held vigils and marches, chanting Maya's name and demanding systemic change. Maya, initially hesitant, began speaking at these events. Her words resonated deeply, inspiring others to share their stories. "This isn't just about one man," she told a crowd. "This is about a system that allows people like him to thrive. It's about all of us coming together to say, no more." Her courage and eloquence earned her admiration far beyond the city. National organizations reached out, offering support and amplifying her voice. After weeks of testimony, the jury returned with a verdict: guilty on all counts. The judge sentenced Gregory to a substantial prison term and ordered him to pay restitution to Maya. As the verdict was read, Maya felt a wave of emotion. Relief, triumph, and a deep sense of justice washed over her. Tears streamed down her face as Daniel hugged her tightly. "You did it," he whispered. "No," she replied, her voice breaking. "We did it." The trial's outcome sent shockwaves through the city. The Alabaster Hotel announced sweeping changes, including mandatory diversity training and the appointment of a new management team. Other businesses took note, implementing their own reforms to prevent similar incidents. Maya and Daniel, though exhausted, felt a renewed sense of purpose. They founded an organization dedicated to fighting discrimination and supporting victims of injustice one evening. Maya and Daniel sat on their porch, the warm glow of the setting sun casting a golden hue over their home. Maya placed her hand on her belly, feeling the baby kick. "You're going to grow up in a better world," she whispered, "because we fought for it." Daniel smiled, wrapping his arm around her. "And we'll keep fighting," he said, "for as long as it takes." The trial was over, but the scars it left behind lingered. Maya sat in the nursery, rocking slowly in the chair Daniel had built for her. The soft hum of a lullaby played from a small speaker, and sunlight filtered through the pale curtains. The room, painted in calming shades of blue and white, was ready for their baby's arrival. Yet, despite the peace of the space, Maya couldn't shake the emotions still coursing through her. She placed a hand on her belly, feeling the baby's gentle movements. "We did it," she whispered. "Justice was served, but I'm still scared." Daniel appeared in the doorway, his expression a mix of love and concern. "You've been through more than anyone should have to endure," he said, walking over to kneel beside her. "But you're not alone. You'll never be alone." Maya looked at him, her eyes filling with tears. "I just want our baby to grow up in a world where they don't have to fight the way we did." Daniel took her hand and kissed it. "And we'll make sure of that. One step at a time." In the weeks following the verdict, Maya became a symbol of resilience and justice in her community. Invitations poured in for her to speak at events, schools, and community centers. Maya, initially hesitant, found herself accepting. Each time she shared her story, she felt a little lighter, as though the weight of her trauma was being transformed into something powerful. One afternoon, she stood before a packed auditorium. The room was silent as she recounted her experience at the Alabaster Hotel. Her voice steady but full of emotion. "What happened to me wasn't unique," she said, her gaze sweeping over the audience. "It happens to people every day. People who don't have the privilege of a camera to capture it or a community to rally behind them. We need to change that. Together, we can." The applause was deafening, but it was the individual conversations afterward that touched Maya most. A young girl approached her, her eyes wide with admiration. "You're so brave," the girl said. "I want to be like you when I grow up." Maya knelt to the girl's level, smiling through her tears. "You already are. as Maya's story gained national attention. It sparked a broader conversation about systemic racism and discrimination in the hospitality industry. Legislators introduced bills aimed at increasing accountability and protecting guests from prejudice. The Alabaster Hotel, under new management, partnered with Maya and Daniel to develop a comprehensive diversity and inclusion program. Maya, while skeptical at first, recognized the potential for real change. "It's not enough to say you're sorry," she told the new CEO during their first meeting. "You need to prove it. Every single day." The CEO nodded. "We're ready to learn." The program, dubbed the Maya Initiative, became a model for other businesses across the country, focusing on training, accountability, and the empowerment of underrepresented communities. Despite her growing platform, Maya remained grounded, focusing on her family as her due date approached. But the experience had ignited a passion in her that she couldn't ignore. With Daniel's encouragement, she decided to launch a nonprofit organization dedicated to fighting discrimination and supporting victims of injustice. The organization, named Brighter Horizons, offered legal aid, mental health resources, and community building programs. Its launch event drew hundreds of supporters, including activists, public figures, and ordinary people inspired by Maya's journey. As Maya stood on stage that evening, Daniel by her side, she felt an overwhelming sense of purpose. "This is just the beginning," she said. "Together, we'll create a world where everyone has a chance to shine." The ripple effects of Maya's fight for justice were felt throughout the city. Conversations about race and privilege became more open, more honest. Schools introduced curriculum changes to address bias, and local businesses began implementing the principles of the Maya Initiative. One day, while grocery shopping, Maya was stopped by an older woman who clasped her hands tightly. "Thank you," the woman said, her voice trembling. "You stood up for all of us. You gave us hope." Maya smiled, her heart swelling. "We stood up together as the final weeks of her pregnancy approached." Maya focused on preparing for her baby's arrival. The nursery was ready, the hospital bag packed, and the excitement palpable. Daniel, ever the doting husband, insisted on being by her side for every appointment, every errand. One evening, as they sat on the porch watching the sunset, Maya felt the first twinge of labor. She gripped Daniel's hand, her eyes wide. "It's time," she said. Daniel jumped into action, grabbing the bag and helping her to the car. The drive to the hospital was a blur, filled with anticipation and nervous laughter. Hours later, their child, a healthy baby boy, entered the world. As Maya held him for the first time, tears streamed down her face. "Welcome to the world, little one," she whispered. "You're going to do great things." Daniel, sitting beside her, kissed her forehead. "You already have, Maya, you already have." Life with a newborn was both exhausting and exhilarating. Maya and Daniel navigated sleepless nights and joyful milestones, their bond growing stronger with each passing day. Despite the chaos of parenthood, Maya continued her work with Brighter Horizons, often bringing their son along to meetings and events. He became a symbol of hope, a reminder of why the fight for justice mattered so deeply. One day, while attending a community event, Maya stood on stage with her son in her arms. She looked out at the crowd, her heart full. "This is why we fight," she said, her voice steady, "not just for ourselves, but for the next generation." Years later, the changes Maya and Daniel had fought for became deeply ingrained in their community. The Alabaster Hotel was no longer a symbol of exclusion but of redemption. The Maya Initiative continued to expand, reaching cities across the country. Maya and Daniel often reflected on how far they had come, but they never forgot the pain that started it all. They used it as fuel to keep pushing forward, to keep inspiring others. One evening, as they sat on their porch watching their son play in the yard, Maya turned to Daniel with a smile. "We made it," she said. Daniel nodded, his eyes full of love. "And we're just getting started." Maya's story became a beacon of hope, a testament to the power of resilience and community. Her nonprofit thrived, her family flourished, and the world she envisioned for her son began to take shape. As she looked back on her journey, from the pain of the Alabaster Hotel to the triumph of justice, she knew one thing for certain: change was possible. And it started with one voice, one act of courage, one unyielding belief in the power of humanity. Maya woke up to the gentle cooing of her newborn son. The sunlight filtered through the nursery window, casting a golden glow over the room. She reached into the crib and lifted him into her arms, marveling at his tiny features. The past few months had been a whirlwind of emotions. But this moment, was peace. Daniel walked in with a cup of tea, his uniform neatly pressed. He leaned down and kissed Maya's forehead. "You two look perfect," he said softly, his eyes lingering on their son. Maya smiled. "We've been through so much. But looking at him, it feels worth it." Daniel nodded. "He's our new beginning, and I'm going to make sure he grows up in a world where he doesn't have to fight the way we did." The trial had ended, but its consequences rippled far beyond the courtroom. The Maya Initiative, born out of Maya's experience, quickly gained traction. It started as a local project, with workshops on unconscious bias and diversity training for businesses. But soon, it expanded into a national movement, with companies across the country adopting its principles. Maya, now a public figure, was invited to speak at universities, corporate events, and conferences. At first, she felt out of place, but Daniel's unwavering support gave her the confidence to step into her new role. One particularly memorable event was at a university where Maya addressed a room full of young activists. "You have the power to change the world," she told them, "not by fighting every battle, but by standing firm in what's right, by speaking up when it matters most." After her speech, a young black woman approached her, tears in her eyes. "Because of you, I feel like I can finally pursue my dreams," she said. "Thank you for showing me it's possible." As the Maya Initiative grew, so did resistance from those unwilling to change. Online trolls flooded Maya's social media accounts with hateful messages, accusing her of stirring trouble for personal gain. Some businesses pushed back against the idea of mandatory diversity training, claiming it was unnecessary or divisive. One evening, as Maya scrolled through her phone, reading the latest wave of criticism, she felt the familiar weight of doubt creeping in. "Why do they hate me so much for wanting equality?" she whispered, tears threatening to spill. Daniel, sitting beside her, wrapped an arm around her shoulders. "They don't hate you, Maya. They hate what you represent, change. And change scares people. But that doesn't mean it's not worth fighting for." His words bolstered her, and Maya decided to address the backlash head-on. In an interview with a national news outlet, she spoke candidly about the challenges she faced. "I didn't choose to become a symbol," she said, "but if my story can help others, if it can shine a light on injustice, then I'll carry that weight." Change isn't easy, but it's necessary. Months later, Maya faced her first major challenge as the leader of the Maya Initiative. A prominent hotel chain was embroiled in a discrimination scandal, and its executives approached Maya, hoping to use her name to salvage their reputation. They offered her a lucrative partnership but were unwilling to make any substantive changes to their policies. Maya knew the decision could make or break her organization. Accepting the deal would bring in much-needed funding, but it would compromise her principles. Declining it could hurt the initiative's growth. After days of soul-searching, Maya called a press conference. Standing before a crowd of reporters, she spoke with unwavering conviction. "I will not allow my name or my mission to be used as a shield for inaction," she declared. "If you want to partner with us, you must be willing to do the hard work, real, meaningful change. Anything less is unacceptable." The audience erupted into applause, and Maya felt a renewed sense of purpose. She had stayed true to her values, and it only strengthened her resolve as Maya continued her advocacy. She found solace in the community that had formed around her. Local leaders, activists, and neighbors came together, organizing events to address systemic issues and celebrate progress. One day, Maya attended a block party hosted by a community center that had adopted the Maya Initiative's principles. The streets were filled with laughter, music, and the aroma of food from different cultures. Maya and Daniel walked through the crowd, their son nestled in a carrier on Daniel's chest. A man approached them, his face lined with years of hardship. "I just wanted to say thank you," he said, his voice thick with emotion. "Because of you, my kids have a chance. They see someone like you standing up, and it gives them hope." Maya placed a hand on his arm, her eyes shining. "Thank you for believing in what we're doing. Change doesn't happen alone, it takes all of us." As the years passed, the Maya Initiative flourished, expanding into schools, workplaces, and community centers across the country. Maya and Daniel continued to balance their roles as advocates and parents, teaching their son the importance of compassion, courage, and resilience. One day, Maya received an invitation to the White House. The president wanted to honor her contributions to social justice with a national award. Standing on the stage in the East Room, surrounded by family and supporters, Maya felt a surge of pride and gratitude. "This award isn't just for me," she said in her acceptance speech. "It's for every person who stood with me, who believed in a better world. Together, we're proving that change is possible, and it starts with each of us." As her son grew, Maya made it a priority to share her journey with him. She wanted him to understand the struggles that had paved the way for the life they now enjoyed. One evening, as they sat on the porch watching the sunset, her son asked, "Mom, why did you fight so hard?" Maya smiled, her heart swelling with pride. "Because some things are worth fighting for," she said, "and one day, you'll understand that the most important battles aren't just for ourselves, they're for the people we love and the world we want to create." Years later, Maya stood at the grand opening of a new community center funded by the Maya Initiative. The building was filled with classrooms, counseling offices, and gathering spaces for people of all ages and backgrounds. As she cut the ribbon, surrounded by friends, family, and supporters, Maya felt an overwhelming sense of fulfillment. What had started as a moment of pain and injustice had grown into something far greater, a legacy of hope, resilience, and change. Looking out at the crowd, she saw the faces of the future, young people inspired to continue the fight, parents determined to create a better world for their children, and a community united by the belief that progress was possible. That night, Maya and Daniel sat together on their porch, their son playing in the yard. The stars glittered above them, and the air was filled with the hum of cicadas. "We've come so far," Maya said, her voice tinged with wonder. "And we're just getting started," Daniel replied, his hand warm against hers. As they watched their son chase fireflies, the future felt bright. They had turned pain into progress, fear into strength, and injustice into hope. Together, they had created a world worth fighting for, and they knew the best was yet to come. The courtroom buzzed with the fading echoes of the verdict. Gregory Stanton was found guilty on all counts, sentenced to prison, and ordered to pay substantial damages to Maya. But as she stood outside the courthouse, surrounded by reporters and flashing cameras, Maya couldn't shake the lingering weight of the experience. Justice had been served, but the scars it left behind still felt raw. "Mrs. Carter, Maya, what's next for you?" shouted a reporter from the throng. Maya held her son close, his tiny hands clutching at her shoulder. Daniel stood protectively by her side, his arm around her waist. She looked at the reporter and took a deep breath. "What's next?" she repeated, her voice steady despite the storm of emotions swirling inside her. "Healing. For my family. For my community. And for everyone who has faced what I faced. This is only the beginning." Her words made headlines, but for Maya, they were more than a statement. They were a promise. The weeks following the trial were a whirlwind of activity. Maya and Daniel returned to their quiet home, but the world around them had changed. Their story became a symbol of hope and resilience, sparking conversations about racial justice and systemic reform. Protests outside the Alabaster Hotel turned into community forums. Local leaders began working with activists to address long-standing issues of discrimination. Schools introduced programs to teach empathy and diversity to students. Maya received letters from across the country, messages of support, gratitude, and inspiration. One, from a single mother in Detroit, moved her to tears. "Because of you," it read, "I found the courage to stand up to my boss when he mistreated me. I finally feel like my voice matters." As she read the letter aloud to Daniel, he smiled. "You're making a difference, Maya, one person at a time." Despite the progress, not everyone celebrated Maya's victory. Online trolls flooded her social media with hateful messages, accusing her of exaggerating her experience for fame. Business owners criticized the reforms she inspired, claiming they were unnecessary and burdensome. One day, as Maya scrolled through the comments, her heart sank. "Why do they hate me for standing up for what's right?" she asked Daniel, her voice tinged with frustration. "They don't hate you," Daniel replied. "They hate the change you represent. Change is hard for people who benefit from things staying the same." Maya nodded, his words giving her strength. "Then I'll keep pushing, for everyone who needs it." She began partnering with other activists to develop workshops for businesses, helping them implement fair and inclusive practices. Despite resistance from some corners, the Maya initiative gained traction, becoming a model for systemic change months later. Maya was invited to speak at a high-profile business conference. The room was filled with CEOs, policymakers, and thought leaders. Maya's nerves simmered as she stepped onto the stage, but she reminded herself of why she was there. "This isn't just about what happened to me," she began, her voice clear and strong. "It's about what happens to people every day, people who don't have the privilege of being heard. We have a choice, to ignore it or to act. I choose to act." Her speech received a standing ovation, but as she left the stage, she was approached by a man with a stern expression. He introduced himself as the head of a prominent hotel chain. "We've been watching your work," he said, his tone neutral. "But frankly, I think you're overstepping. Not every business can afford to cater to everyone." Maya stared at him, her frustration bubbling beneath her calm demeanor. "It's not about catering," she replied. "It's about treating people with basic respect. And if that feels like an inconvenience, maybe it's time to rethink your priorities." The encounter only strengthened her resolve. Change wouldn't come easy, but Maya was more determined than ever to fight for it, inspired by the support she received during her ordeal. Maya decided to channel her energy into creating lasting change. She and Daniel founded a nonprofit organization called Brighter Horizons, dedicated to fighting discrimination and providing resources for those affected by it. The organization offered free legal aid, counseling services, and diversity training programs for businesses. Its launch event, held at a local community center, drew hundreds of attendees, including activists, educators, and families. Standing before the crowd, Maya spoke from the heart. Brighter Horizons isn't just a name, it's a promise. A promise that no one has to face injustice alone. And that together, we can create a world where everyone has a chance to thrive. As she looked out at the sea of faces, Maya felt a surge of hope. The pain she endured had been transformed into something meaningful. Something that could help others 1 year later. Brighter Horizons faced its first major challenge. A corporation accused of discriminatory practices approached Maya, offering a generous donation in exchange for a public partnership. But their internal policies remained unchanged, and Maya saw through their attempt to buy goodwill. She convened her team and laid out the dilemma. If we accept their money without demanding accountability, we're compromising everything we stand for, she said. Her team agreed, and Maya declined the offer. Issuing a public statement, "We won't be a part of performative change," she said. "Real progress requires real effort." The decision was met with both criticism and praise. But Maya stood firm, knowing she had stayed true to her mission as time passed. Maya and Daniel balanced their advocacy work with the joys and challenges of raising their son. Their home became a hub of activity, filled with laughter, late-night brainstorming sessions, and moments of quiet reflection. One evening, as they sat on the porch watching their son chase fireflies, Maya turned to Daniel. "Do you ever think about how far we've come?" she asked. "Every day," Daniel replied, his voice filled with pride. "And I know we've still got a long way to go. But with you by my side, I'm ready for whatever comes next." Maya smiled, her heart full. "Me too." Years later, Maya stood before a crowd at the opening of a new community center funded by Brighter Horizons. The building was a testament to her journey, a place where people could find support, education, and empowerment. As she cut the ribbon, she felt a swell of emotion. What had started as a moment of pain and injustice had grown into a movement. One that would continue to inspire and uplift long after she was gone. Looking out at the crowd, she saw the faces of the future, young people inspired by her story, families united by hope, and a community transformed by the belief that change was possible. That night, Maya and Daniel sat together on their porch, their son now a teenager, full of dreams and determination. The stars shimmered above them, and the air was filled with the hum of crickets. "We've built something beautiful," Maya said softly, "and we're not done yet," Daniel replied, his hand warm against hers. As they watched their son share his plans for the future, Maya felt a sense of peace. The fight had been long and hard, but it had been worth it. Together, they had turned pain into progress, fear into strength, and hope into a brighter dawn. The journey wasn't over, but the path ahead was filled with possibility, and they were ready to walk it. Hand in hand,